share some of what I've been doing, trying to use social media to increase the accessibility of science, because I think it's a really powerful and unique tool to be using in the science space. So I have the great privilege, oh, this one, okay. It's showing up a little washed out here, but I have the great privilege of being someone who gets to go to a lab every day as part of my PhD and study, looking through the microscope, this world that doesn't exist unless you have this type of equipment, this small microscopic world. I study how stem cells build the brain, so I'm trying to reconstruct the history of our brains one cell at a time. And I think I'm very lucky that I get to study that. I get to be creative and learning every single day, and I'm very privileged to be in that position. And part of why I wanted to go on social media to talk about what I learned is because I recognize that privilege and that it's not equally accessible to everyone. So while I think science is wonderful and can teach us wonderful things, and I get to look at these beautiful cells all day, I've also noticed that science has quite a few problems. Two of the many we could list are up here. There's a huge lack of trust in science. And science is also really inaccessible, both as a career and as the information it produces. It's really inaccessible, and I'm going to show you some examples of that to really make my point here, because you should always ask for some evidence for what people say. So these two challenges that have really inspired me to go on social media, I think actually are very interconnected and feed each other further. So for the first one, I'm going to show you this picture here. I found this on Twitter. It was taken earlier this week by a Toronto scientist. This was something that you could purchase at a local Shoppers Drug Mart not too far away from here. And on it, just where this arrow is, you can see it says, based on traditional whatever references and not modern scientific evidence. And I think the fact that there's a market for something that would be boasting about not being based on science tells us that there's an issue with trust. It tells that people who advertise think about what they're going to put on the front of a box a lot. And the fact that they think more people will buy it if we say this, we have a trust issue in science. There are many other reasons why. To speak to the inaccessibility, I have a little challenge for you. So I'm going to show you screenshots from two websites I found. I'm in the field of stem cells, so I Googled stem cell therapy, I found some websites, and I have some screenshots for you. I'm going to show you two, and I want you to tell me, of the two, which do you think is the more legitimate? Okay, so this is the activity. Here's the first one. I'll give you a second to look. Okay. You got a good look there? All right, so this is number one. So keep that in mind, take a little screenshot in your head. Here is number two. Okay, so we'll do raise your hand if you think of these two. Number one is the stem cell clinic you would go to and bring your kids to. Anyone? Number one? Okay. And which one, number two? Okay, anyone who wouldn't trust either? Oh, well, you guys are all smart. That's not fair. This is a biased sample audience. So in fact, neither of them are legitimate. They're both these hokey clinics that are just trying to get your money, basically. There's no evidence. But I mean, some people in this room knew that, but to be honest, I had to really dig through and go through that website. I had to look stuff up, and I've asked a bunch of my friends this question, and most of my friends not in science agree that one of them is one that they would trust. And I have talked to patients who are going to these types of clinics, and to me that tells us, okay, we're publicly funded, we're using public tax dollars to pay for our science, and we're not sharing the information we're learning enough. And people are putting their lives in danger because it's not within their capacity to know. I've had like 10 years of training, and it takes me time to understand what's real and what isn't. And I don't think that's the public's fault, that's our fault for not sharing it enough, right? It's our responsibility as experts to disseminate that information. So to me, though, that shows us how inaccessible science is. And again, I don't put it on the fault of anyone going to these clinics, but rather the people who have that knowledge who aren't sharing it. And so the types of consequences are real and severe. So this was a recent news story of people who are going blind because they went to these types of clinics, they weren't legitimate, and it just made their problem much worse. And if you think that these clinics only exist in certain parts of the world or certain areas. They're widespread. This is the map, and the U.S. is the country with the most of these Hokie stem cell clinics. So it's really close to home, and we have to be really careful. So the solution for this, I think, is kind of simple in theory. We just need more science communicators. We just need more people to talk about science and explain this type of thing, and bam, problem solved, right? I agree. However, if we look at all the scientists that exist in the popular media, they are great. And everyone up on here has inspired me, either through comedy or through the real education that they do. But what do you notice? There's a big lack of diversity. And not just the fact that they're all males, although that's really important, but also in terms of their approach, their age, all of them kind of, especially towards the left side, we have this more like somewhat condescending approach to communicating science. I think Chris Hadfield does a fantastic job, actually, so maybe we need more Canadian science communicators, maybe that's the point. But I think he does a great job. He really welcomes people in. But a lot of the other people on this slide, no matter how great and smart they are and how passionate, they sometimes make you feel bad to ask questions. And to be honest, sometimes I would be shy to ask Neil deGrasse a question because he almost makes me feel like I'm stupid if I don't know the answer, and that's not fair. So I think we need to diversify the type of communicators that we have in the public eye a lot. This is really important because, as I said, we have a lack of trust in science and lack of accessibility. And trust, it turns out, a lot of psychology studies tell us that trust, it's important if the person speaking to you is relatable. So the other problem with the scientists up here is they're all kind of, as you wonderfully said, these people in lab coats, kind of nerd, maybe antisocial. Well, I'm a scientist. I love socializing. I love hanging out with friends. I love makeup. I love all this. And so people like me don't have really role models to look into of scientists because we're always just showing one kind of unidimensional version of a scientist. And so for that reason, I think we need to start to diversify the communicators that are out there. Now this really, I didn't think about how much this order makes me look like I'm making a plug for myself, but here's what I did about it. I decided, you know what, where are people? They are on social media. I could make science in their pocket. I could bring it to them right to where they're consuming. So I created this science Instagram account. I called myself science.sam. And here I'm showing you the most recent screenshot of my account, but I make an effort to showcase not only myself and what I'm doing in the lab, but also other people who I think reflect the true diversity of scientists and of people who could be doing science. So it's not just about me, although you'll notice I take pictures of myself. The reason that I do that, I'm going to defend it because everyone makes fun. I go to conferences and I'm taking selfies for my Instagram where I'm educating people about science, and I get a lot of dirty looks and people being like, oh, you're taking a picture of yourself, right? I'm doing it because that is the language on social media. I've looked at it objectively. Every post with a selfie, not just of me, of anyone, the face. We are drawn to faces. We have an area of our brain that's responsible for us recognizing faces. That's how important it is. And so the language of Instagram is selfies. So that's what I do, because ultimately I just want to be effective. But so I show things, live from the lab. Here's what I'm doing today. Here's the problem I'm having with my research right now. Here's what my lab looks like. And then I'll do some fun stuff too. Oh, I'll show you after, I guess. I didn't put it next. And then I do some fun stuff too, just to try to show people that science is fun, that you can be whatever and still do science if you want to. And if you don't want to do science but you want to learn about science, this is a place for you to learn about it too. So quickly, I'll just justify why I chose Instagram. It has over 400 million daily active users and over 700 million monthly. Over 40 billion photos have been shared, and this has probably gone up since this stat was recorded. What's really important to me is that Canadians, the average Canadian will check, and this goes for almost any country, they'll check Instagram about 11 times a day. I check it I don't even want to tell you how many times a day. But the point is that now we can, instead of just making science something people look at on TV or in books, we're kind of inundating them with it. so that now it becomes very familiar, and we're incepting them to some degree with science so that it's so normal, because every time they open up their phone, it pops up in their news feed. That's really powerful. That's in like allowing science to infiltrate popular culture. I think that that has a huge advantage. And so that's why I chose Instagram, because of its popularity. I think that means that it can really slowly start to change attitudes. And the real type of attitude change that we need for a pro-science culture is probably going to take some time. So I have some quick examples to show you types of posts I do. So this was my Halloween costume just a few weeks ago. I was Quicksilver from X-Men, and I made a whole post about all the science behind, like, is Quicksilver, what's the science behind it if he were real? You know, like, how can he move so fast? What's his metabolism like? All that. And so I thought that that was, what's the genetics like, because he's Magneto's son, whatever, what's the linkage there? So all sorts of fun stuff about turning a costume, something where I just wanted to put glitter on my face, into something that could also be scientific. And yes, I know he doesn't have glitter on his face, but it was an interpretation. I also will show some highlights from the lab. So here I'm showing you some tissue sections through a rat brain. And here I'll use that kind of, the important thing if you want to move into this social media for telling science stories or any other story really, it's very powerful, but you do need to play the game. And Instagram has a strict kind of aesthetic code. So if you do want your pictures to be seen, sometimes you got to make them look cool. So I edit my photos and try to make them look nice so that people scrolling through, when their options are like all these cool travel photos, I can still try to kind of catch their eye. But it is a really tough market to infiltrate when I'm trying to teach and everyone else is just showing cool stuff. But in this way, what's really important is I didn't have people in my life, I always knew I wanted to be a scientist, but I didn't have people that I knew to ask about what it was like to be a scientist. So by showing this, like, hey, this is what I'm working on today, I hope that people who are aspiring scientists can now see, okay, this is what the day-to-day of this career looks like. And so by doing this really simple thing of a pretty picture of something in the lab could be quite profound, where we're now telling people like, hey, you want this career, this is what it's like. And so that's somewhat, it's not doing everything, but starting to bridge the gap and increase the accessibility of career, being a scientist as your career as well. It's just one small step, and we need obviously many more efforts, but it's something nonetheless. So on that note, I also try to give study tips, because again, I realize I've been very lucky to get where I am. I've had a lot of support from my family and friends and educators, and so I try to share that as well, and I'll give tips frequently for, like, I don't know, I'm not the best student, but here's what worked for me, and try to use it as a way to crowdsource information. So I'll ask people, what's your best tip in the comments? And it's a really good way to, again, like, connect, build community, and help people who are struggling with reaching their goals to reach it. And it's, again, because it's every day on their phone, you can really, really make an impact on their lives. This is a really interactive platform, which I think is great, and I don't think enough people are using this for science, so I really encourage, if you like science or you're making something in a STEM-related field, or again, any field, take advantage of the live stream feature. I think it's really powerful because people can be seeing what you're doing, and then they can be commenting. You can take videos. So an event like this, where it's a finite number of people in the room, by live streaming it, we can expand that so that even people who can't physically be here for whatever reason, geography or whatever might be keeping them at home, they can now still experience and learn. And I think that's really important if we're talking about accessibility. Social media, a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people have access to the internet. And so I think that's a great way to make things more accessible. The last kind of social change that we can use social media for, I saw a really stupid ad, again at Shoppers Drug Mart. So it's two things that was saying, skip class, not concealer. I thought it was dumb, shared it on Twitter, and then on Instagram, and we got a lot of people talking about it. And so here's where the real power of social media comes in. You can amplify messages a lot. So we had hundreds of thousands of impressions and thousands of people who submitted photos. We started this campaign to show that yes, you can like makeup. Yes, you don't have to like makeup, but you can, and still be a scientist and still be really smart, and those two things should not be mutually exclusive. So we started this effective campaign, and now we got all of these people putting their faces on this type of messaging. And again, I think that's very important, because that's what young people, that's how they understand things. You know, they need a selfie and a caption, and that's how it works. This is how teens communicate these days. So we're putting a good message attached to that same type of picture, I think really connects with people and really helps people to think beyond what they might have been thinking about. And that was a really powerful campaign I was happy to be about. To conclude, I want to say a few last things. I'm not the only one doing this. I talked about my own experiences because that's what I know about, but you can search for other scientists online. I think a really important takeaway is to encourage people in your life to use social media for good messages. Encourage them, if they want to be a scientist, tell them to look up #scientist on social media. What a great way to network and connect and learn. If they're into any specific field in science, they can, again, use the hashtag to find other people and connect with them. So this was one that I made, hashtag campaign scientists who selfie, and we showed all of these amazing scientists. There are now 1,600 posts of people from the field, from the lab, sharing what they're doing. And so that's just such a great way to find mentors, a great way to share your science in a more personal way that will hopefully help us foster more trust. And I'm actually involved in an academic study to see whether pairing a scientist and a selfie and whatever science thing they're studying will help to foster more trust, to slowly try to let us overcome this challenge we're having in science where people just don't trust us. People would rather, oh, that's scientific? Yeah, but the pharmaceutical industry, this and that. So the way that we can overcome that is hopefully through fostering better trust, and maybe through something as simple as a selfie. That would be a great and simple solution. The last thing, like I said, I've been very lucky. I really love what I do, and I'm really grateful that for spaces like this where we can encourage other people to do the same and to share their messages. I encourage all of you, if you have a message that you're passionate about, to share it on social media. And again, try to make a personal way, because that's, again, something as simple as a selfie is how you can really connect with people. Make it personal, and that makes people care more about your brand and want to invest more into engaging with you. And if I could give you one takeaway from this, it would be, if you see other people doing that same thing, please go and support them. Please go engage, comment with that, because otherwise we won't be able to continue doing this type of thing. If you like something the New York Times does, engage, comment, share. And really be an active user of social media where you're putting your clicks where your values are. And that's the only way people like us can continue doing what we're doing. Otherwise, we'll get drowned out by messages that are maybe not as positive and constructive for society. So if you ever want to talk more about anything related to science, communication, social media, whatever, please feel free to reach out. I love connecting with other people, and I'm happy to talk more about this in the future. Thanks.